From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight is on climate change. Global warming has arrived with a vengeance. The Earth's average temperature will reach 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels by around 2030. This will breach the ambitions of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement and bring widespread devastation and extreme weather. This is a decade earlier than projected, only 3 years ago. And it's according to a landmark UN assessment published on Monday. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC's bombshell report arrived 90 days before a key climate summit. IPCC is the world's leading authority on climate. It is led by the world's top climate scientist. Its first report came out in 1990. At that time, it accurately predicted the climate we are facing today. It says nations have a small window to stop a global catastrophe. The past 6 years are the hottest on record. The world's oceans were hottest ever recorded in 2020. IPCC's report also says that the past decade was probably hotter than any period in the last 125,000 years. Only rapid and drastic reductions in greenhouse gases in this decade can prevent such climate breakdown. Governments from 197 countries will meet this November in Glasgow for vital UN climate talks called COP26. Senator Ed Markey tweeted, "If senators truly followed the science in the IPCC report, we'd have 100 votes for climate action." He asked the current reconciliation be used for action on climate change. The $1 trillion infrastructure bill is nearing the finish line in the U.S. Senate. In a rare stroke of bipartisanship, Republicans join Democrats to advance the measure. More votes are expected on Sunday. Although it's likely to pass, some hurdles remain. In related news, Senate Democrats unveiled a $3.5 trillion budget proposal. This is focused on President Joe Biden's program for social and climate change. Later tonight in our show, we'll be discussing this in detail, so keep watching Muslim News. Vaccinations are going up in the American South. These are the same states with the highest COVID cases in the U.S. They include Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi. All of these states previously had the country's lowest vaccination rates, other than Florida. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker signed bills into law last week that end immigration detention in Illinois. They will expand protections for immigrants and refugees. In a press release, the governor's office said it will now require local officials to end partnerships with ICE. The new legislation also addresses hate crimes against immigrant communities. In addition, it will expand workplace protections for recipients of DACA or deferred action for childhood arrivals. Tonight is the New Year's Eve on the Islamic calendar. Tomorrow will be the first day of Muharram, the month which marks the start of a new year. The Muslim calendar is based on the monthly cycles of the moon's phases. Muslims generally do not celebrate their new year with elaborate firework displays, but it is marked with a commemoration of the journey of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, from his birthplace, Mecca, to Medina. The migration is called the Hijra. Muslims often refer to the Islamic calendar as the Hijri Calendar for just this reason. Tomorrow will mark 1443 Islamic calendar years since the Hijra. More details in this report from Ali Khalaf and Saleha Farouk.
The Islamic Year 1443 will begin on August 10, 2021. The Hijri calendar is based on lunar observation. Hijra literally means migration in Arabic. The calendar marks the day that the Prophet Muhammad was forced to leave his city Mecca to Yathrib in 622 CE, peace be upon him. Yathrib is now called Medina, the city of the Prophet. The Hijri calendar consists of 12 lunar months in a year of 354 or 355 days. It is used to determine the proper days of Islamic holidays and rituals. For example, Ramadan, the month of fasting, is the proper time for Hajj and when to celebrate Eid. It was the second Caliph Umar who in the year 639 CE introduced the Hijra calendar. Muslims don't celebrate the beginning of the new Hijra calendar. However, the first day of the Islamic calendar is a public holiday in some countries like Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Tunisia. Muslims mourn the martyrdom of Prophet Muhammad's grandson Hussein on the 10th of Muharram, may God be pleased with him. He died standing against tyranny and oppression of the king. Muslims also choose to fast on the 9th and 10th day following Prophet Muhammad. The fasting is in commemoration of Moses, Aaron, and Bani Israel's liberation from the pharaohs of Egypt.
Saudi Arabia began receiving Umrah pilgrimage requests from foreign governments for vaccinated worshippers today. Individuals will still need to go through their travel agents. For 18 months, the kingdom closed its borders to foreign pilgrims due to the coronavirus pandemic. Initially, only 60,000 Umrah pilgrims per month will be allowed. The numbers will gradually be increased to 2 million per month, according to a government announcement. Vaccinated pilgrims from countries on Saudi Arabia's no-entry list will, however, be subject to quarantine upon arrival. The Taliban continue to expand their power in Afghanistan. They've captured 6 provincial capitals in 3 days. Their top prize is the city of Kunduz. The strategically located city now blocks the capital city Kabul's access to the north, its mineral assets, as well as trade with a few other countries. Kunduz is also where an American gunship mistakenly attacked a Doctors Without Borders hospital in 2015, killing 42 people. The Taliban have seized control of approximately half of the country's roughly 400 districts. Afghan government troops abandoned scores of outposts and bases, often leaving behind weapons and equipment. In many cases, they surrender without a fight. This was sometimes after the intercession of village elders dispatched by the Taliban. The Afghan government is well equipped with a 350,000 strong military force. They plan to retake the lost areas. Meanwhile, the Taliban has accused the US of bombing a hospital and a high school, along with other civilian targets in Helmand province. Amnesty International says Ben & Jerry's decision to stop business in illegal Israeli settlements is legitimate and necessary. On July 19th, the US-based ice cream company announced that its ice cream will not be sold in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territories. In a press release, Amnesty International said that in addition to the inherent illegalities of the settlements themselves, the settlement enterprise is inextricably linked to gross and systematic human rights violations against Palestinians. Meanwhile, the company's decision is having repercussions in the United States. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has nominated Ben & Jerry and its parent company, Unilever, for a blacklist of companies that boycott Israel. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott said Tuesday the company must reverse their decision. Maryland and Illinois have also initiated the process of punishing the ice cream maker. Ben & Jerry's move is considered one of the strongest condemnations of Israeli settlements by a well-known company. Its decision came on the heels of Human Rights Watch calling Israel an apartheid state. But it's facing challenges. There are 30 US states with laws preventing pension funds from investing in companies that refuse to do business with the Jewish state. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau named the Honourable Mahmood Jamal to the Supreme Court of Canada last week. Jamal will become the first Muslim and the first person of color to sit on Canada's highest court. In a press release, Trudeau said that he knows Jamal, with his exceptional legal and academic experience and dedication to serving others, will be a valuable asset to the country's highest court. Heavy rains, flash floods, and landslides are further disrupting the lives of the 900,000 Rohingya refugees living in camps in Bangladesh. 20,000 Rohingya refugees have now been displaced again. Authorities recently arrested 2 Rohingya journalists who tried to expose the camp's conditions. In related news, Bangladesh's government has refused to follow international law regarding services to refugees. They informed their funders at the World Bank that Bangladesh will not follow the rules. They also said they do not consider the Rohingya to be refugees. Leaders from India's ruling party, the BJP, led a rally with slogans threatening Muslims with mass murder if they didn't chant the invocation Ram Ram to a Hindu god. The extremists were rallying next to the Indian Parliament in Delhi. After the videos of the event went viral, police registered a case against the offenders without naming anyone. No one has been arrested. The protest was organized by a Supreme Court lawyer and former Delhi BJP spokesperson Ashwani Upadhyay. The slogans were shouted in the presence of Narsingh Anand Saraswati. He's a Hindu priest notorious for communal hate speeches. Television actor and BJP leader Gajendra Chauhan was also reportedly a part of the protest. A Muslim member of the Indian Parliament, Asadullah Owaisi, said the slogans were heard 20 minutes from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's residence. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Welcome back. In our news stories, we shared the devastation caused by rain and floods in the Rohingya camps. In one of our previous in-depth analysis, a Rohingya refugee from Cox's Bazar shared the situation on the ground. Let's watch this again.
Once again, thank you. Today we're joined by Abdullah Habib, who is a Rohingya refugee currently living in Bangladesh. Abdullah, thank you so much for your time today.
Hello everyone, this is Abdullah connecting from the refugee camp in Bangladesh. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for all of you here today listening to me. I am doing good, but the situation of the camp is not good yet, as it's been 4 days here continuous raining and flooding every camp, and also landslides are happening.
So this recent flooding has hit mostly the refugee camps in Bangladesh, which is home to predominantly Rohingya people such as yourself. This is a heartbreaking situation. I want to ask you, Abdullah, how are the people in Cox's Bazar camp more vulnerable to the changing climate? How are they impacted more?
Actually, it's been 4 years we are here in Rohingya in the camp in Bangladesh, but we did not experience this situation in past years, in past 3 years. But this year we have this horrible situation in this monsoon. Uh, Actually, the camp is not not a good place, not a secure place, not a uh, uh, to survive, as it is hilly region. Some shelters were built over the hill. Some shelters are built in the side of the hill, and some are you know below the hills. So the location of the shelters are not the same. The mostly the flooding was happened in the shelter which are the below of the hills, as there is no you know there is no place to flow the water easily, as the shelters are were built very crowdedly. And when the raining was started, when the rainy season was started, there was no special management to avoid this flooding. And actually, in Bangladesh, especially in Bangladesh, this heavy raining was happened in this area, in Cox's Bazar area. And in other part of the Bangladesh, there was not there was not heavy raining like here we have. So since 4 days, we have heavy raining and flooding. Already, uh, nearly 15,000 people are affected, and many shelters were destroyed, many shelters were damaged, and also kill at least 7 people. This flooding.
Now, this flooding has affected some camps that were in existence since the 90s. So a lot of people are wondering, where are these families going to go now that their only homes have been destroyed?
Actually, we do not have any other place to move on. We do not have any safe place to avoid, to escape this flooding and the heavy raining. So sometimes we try to move another place where the flooding did not happen. And also some people take shelter over the hill, who were in the below of the hill where the flooding was happened. And now currently the government and NGOs are planning to relocate some of the family who were mostly affected in this flooding.
It is reported that almost 2,000 children in the camps are missing, unfortunately. And for many years, human rights defenders have warned that such seasonal cyclones pose a major threat to refugees like yourself. I wanted to ask you, Abdullah, what is the Bangladeshi government doing to protect Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh?
Actually, the Bangladesh government are trying to protect us as they can. They have provided security force in the camp. They have provided police. They have provided army, and also they have planning uh, to diverse people, to disperse people from the camp, so that the crowded in order to to decrease crowded. Actually, the camp is very crowded. We are living in very crowded place. In 1 kilometer place, we are living 50,000 people in 1 kilometer place. So the camp is very limited. So if there is happen any disaster, any natural disaster, so Bangladesh could not build any safe place to escape the disaster because of there is no any empty space to build such shelter, to build such building. So if sometime it's happened, they try to relocate people in another place from the away it is like they did in few months ago. They relocated few some people to Passenger Island. So currently they also trying to do the same thing, the people who are affected in this flooding. So we can say we do not have any a special protection from either from the Bangladesh government nor from the NGOs. We are living as we have lived in Myanmar, and also we cannot we cannot hope of any protection from NGO, from Bangladesh government. So we try ourselves to stay safe. We try ourselves to have protection the way we can.
So after the flooding, a lot of Rohingya are saying that they want to return to Myanmar or Burma if their safety is ensured and if they can receive their citizenship. What do you think about this?
Okay, good question. Actually, we all the refugee want to return our country as soon as possible. But the situation is not good in Myanmar yet. Also, the government of Myanmar are not ready to accept us, are not ready to, start the repatriation process. Uh, the way we want to return. We have some demand before returning to our country, and if they are also they are ready to give us our rights, to give us citizenship, to give us the safety and security. We will return anytime. Even today, if they are going to give us this, we will go. But though we are affected in flooding, we are affected by the flooding, and we do not have any place to stay in Bangladesh refugee camp. We cannot go return to our country because we cannot go return to our country without anything, without our rights, without our citizenship. So if anyone if anyone decide to return to our country in this hard time, so but he cannot go, he cannot return because of the situation in Myanmar also very bad, very also they are the people in Myanmar also affected by the COVID-19, and also the coup has the military coup has disturbed everyone in the country. So we can say anyone, no one of the refugee would like to go the country in this time.
The Rohingya people in the camps have experienced a lot. They went through the lockdown because of COVID-19. There was also some fires that destroyed some camps. And on top of everything, now you are dealing with the flooding. If you can tell us, what is the feeling amongst the Rohingya community? What do your family think? What do your friends think? What would they like to tell the NGOs, the Bangladeshi government, and the Burmese government?
Actually, yes, you're right. We have been facing many, horrible situation even in the camp since we are here. As if I say, a few months ago we have fire accident. It was a massive fire accident ever we have in the camp. Uh, so also there this accident was made nearly 50,000 people shelterless. Also everything everything they have was burned on. They lost everything in this fire accident. The same things now happening in this flooding. So actually, the life in the camp are not very easy to survive. We have challenges in every step, and we have challenges in every day. We have challenge. We face many, self challenges in our daily life. So actually, whenever we face such challenges, we cannot move on without, uh, overcoming these challenges. We have to find way to overcome the challenges. So, for example, now we have lost everything in this flood, and we do not have clothes to wear because it is already wetted. It was already wetted, and the foods are also destroyed. The the shelter is not suitable to sleep. So how we are managing this to sleep in and eat in and wearing. So yes, in this hard situation, what we do is we eat dry food. When we do not have foods to eat, and also we cannot. If we have food, we cannot cook it because the place, the kitchen is flooded. So, and we do not have clothes, dry clothes, so we wear the wetted clothes. So such things we face in the camp. So, and this is not new thing for us. We have been facing such challenges since we were in Myanmar, and we can say it is like our daily life. This is our daily life. So every moment we have challenges.
Abdullah Habib is a Rohingya refugee living in Bangladesh. Abdullah, thank you so much for your courage and for your time to speak with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me here, and also for hearing my voice.
Back to the news studio.
Thank you, Saleha and Abdullah. Before moving on to our next analysis, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after these messages.
Our fellow Americans.
Right now, the COVID-19 vaccines are available to millions of Americans.
And soon, they will be available to everyone.
The science is clear. These vaccines will protect you and those you love from this dangerous and deadly disease.
They could save your life.
So we urge you to get vaccinated when it's available to you.
That's the first step to ending the pandemic and moving our country forward. It's up to you.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now.
and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
Welcome back. Earlier tonight, we shared the news of the infrastructure bill in the Senate. To discuss this in detail, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. We have Professor Rick Geddes from Cornell. He's the founding director of Cornell Program in Infrastructure Policy. Welcome to Muslim Network, Professor.
Thank you, Malik.
So, are you happy with the $1 trillion bill which is going through Senate?
I'm happy that a bill is likely going to be passed by the United States Congress and likely to be signed by the president. I think it's such an enormous bill, 2,800 pages in the Senate side. There's things that are both good and bad about the bill. But I think the passage of the bill itself, which crosses infrastructure sectors, multi-sectoral, many policy issues addressed in the bill, bipartisan bill, I think will have 70 votes in the Senate, is itself a very positive thing. And of course, Malik will have to analyze exactly what's in the bill once the House and the Senate reconcile and the president signs it.
So tell us what is good in your view in this bill?
Well, I think, again, it's kind of rare for the United States Congress to pass a bill that deals with heavy civil infrastructure holistically. Normally, infrastructure delivery in the United States is heavily siloed. And by that, Malik, I mean, typically Congress would pass a transportation bill, then a water bill, then an energy bill. And now, of course, we're all talking about broadband, which we're using right now. But this bill deals across infrastructure sectors with a number of problems in the United States infrastructure world that are endemic across sectors. So I think the fact that it's dealing with multi-sectors at once is a good thing. I think that the fact that it's addressing deferred maintenance, depending on the estimates, the American Society of Civil Engineers estimates about $1 trillion of deferred maintenance in the United States across infrastructure sectors. I think it'll help to reduce the backlog of that. So I think that those are some positive things. Also, the United States, Malik, has kind of surprisingly behind many other developed and developing countries in cooperation between the public and the private sector. So including the private sector to help improve infrastructure delivery. And I think the bill does a number of things that will help over the long term to improve public and private sector cooperation across infrastructure sectors.
Do you think maintenance is good enough for the future of our country?
You mean
you mentioned that it takes care of maintenance, which was overdue. But what about rebuilding for the future?
Yes, well, that I think is a very important consideration because our interstate highway system, they began construction in the 1950s, in the height of the Cold War. That was a long time ago. And it was designed and constructed quickly and in a certain way that fit that time to build out new and complete networks. And that was not just true of the interstate highway system, Malik. That was true of our energy system, our landline telephone system, many of our drinking and wastewater treatment systems. And I could go on, dams, levees, seaports, airports, and so on. So I think as we build back, right, we take care of this backlog of deferred maintenance, it should be done in a different way. And I can give you specific examples. Many of the interstate highways in the United States cut directly through a city. And of course, it divides the city in half. There's an elevated highway, I-81, right through Syracuse, a city not far from where I'm sitting right now, that really divides the city in half. So as we rebuild those interstates, we definitely want to rethink maybe the layout, the right-of-way, whether it should be a tunnel, whether it should be put in a trench with a covered trench. Also, Malik, new technologies. There's a huge host of technologies, smart stoplights, LED streetlights, methane capture. Methane is a major greenhouse gas at wastewater treatment plants. We could capture that methane and use it to create energy in a win-win situation. There's new technologies for that. They really abound in the infrastructure world. And I think as we rebuild, we need to better incorporate those new technologies. And there's a whole set of procurement methods that I think have been neglected in the United States that could really help state and local governments, which own 90% of the civil infrastructure in the United States. It's not federal. It's owned by smaller state and local governments, that those governments should really be adopting those new technologies as they rebuild.
So we recently came under attack when the viral attacks or different type of cyber attacks cause our grid system and infrastructure to face challenges. Does this bill address some of those concerns? Because we can build, but if somebody can destroy through software, so does it pay enough attention to software aspect of our grid systems?
It's a great question, Malik. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the final bill yet. Again, the House has their bill, the Senate has their bill. There have been, I think it's really a bipartisan issue. Cybersecurity is a huge issue in the United States right now with regard to infrastructure. You might be familiar with the Colonial Pipeline, a crude oil pipeline that was shut down due to a cyber attack. Many other examples. I mean, the hundreds of smaller businesses that are attacked regularly in a cyber sense. So I would hope that there's bipartisan consensus, that this could be crippling for U.S. infrastructure if, say, were there a major attack on one of our big energy grids, right? But it could be other smaller systems as well that are crippling. So I would hope that the final bill pays a lot of attention, just reporting, central reporting effort for different cyber attacks would be helpful. But of course, there's many more deeper and profound things that we could do. And this is all, Malik, falls under the heading of resilience of infrastructure, hardening the infrastructure to various threats that could either be from humans or from nature. So I think a big theme as we consider rebuilding our infrastructure is really going to be this issue of infrastructure resilience. And that's climate change, which includes sea level rise. It can include hurricanes. It can include tornadoes. A whole bunch of wildfires are another issue. All these things need to be considered, if you will, in a new generation of U.S. infrastructure.
Professor Geddes, you also mentioned there are some bad things in this bill. Could you highlight what is wrong in there?
Sure thing, Malik. So one of the things I think is doesn't get enough attention is just spending money, but delivering, meaning procuring civil infrastructure in the way we have for the past 50 or 60 years is not going to solve some of the main problems, which are deferred maintenance, poor project selection in some cases, slow adoption of new technologies. We need to rethink the way infrastructure is delivered or procured. And there's a whole set of things we can talk about, Malik, that would improve it. But one that I'm a big fan of is bundling or wrapping project elements together. And that's design and construction when you do, and that could be renovation of an old facility as well as design and construction of a new one, in with operation and maintenance in a long-term contract. Long-term could be 25 or 30 years. That's called a DBOM, DBOM, design, build, operate, maintain. And some projects in the United States are already delivered that way. But I think much more universal use of a DBOM contract structure, which requires the public owner to maintain the infrastructure at a certain engineering standard contractually over that 25 or 30-year period, that would help make sure we never get in this hole again. I mean, the question is, the United States is a relatively wealthy country. How did we get in the situation of having $1 trillion of deferred maintenance? It's because the procurement or the contracting approaches have not focused on maintaining infrastructure, operating it to a certain level. And contract structures like DBOMs, and there's others, can help with that. My point is the bill, I think, at least the versions that I've read, doesn't do enough to try to change the way U.S. infrastructure is procured so that we don't, in, say, 10 years, we'll spend all this money, but in 10 years, we might be back in the same situation. So I think we really need to rethink our contract structures that way.
That's an excellent point, Professor. Could you share with me the way bill it is right now in the Senate? Is the funding adequate enough?
Well, that's been a big sticking point, Malik, and that relates to the question of how much is this bill going to add to the deficit, which of course is already enormous, and then we're going to add more to that, versus how much of the bill, is paid for. So it's really an open question of how much these various budgetary methods are going to help pay for the bill. So I think that's unclear. I think it's pretty clear that it will add to the deficit hundreds of billions of dollars, in cost. It remains to be seen exactly how much. Of course, to those points, Malik, my training is in economics, so I'm a fan of user fees, right? Or just a price or a rate or a fee, for the use of the infrastructure. And it's a question of who should pay for it. Should it be taxpayers? Should it be future taxpayers, our children and grandchildren, in the form of debt payments? Or should it be the users of the infrastructure? And so more user fees, mileage-based user fees, as much as you can, users of harbors and dredging, et cetera. Those things in an ideal bill would help to pay for the renovation of the infrastructure.
Well, that's a good point, and that reminds me, Professor Geddes, of your recommendation in an old article that the federal law, which prohibits providing amenities at the rest area, if those restrictions are lifted, that might become a source of funding itself. Do you think some suggestion like that is a part of this bill?
I'm sorry, Malik, what was the restriction?
In one article you have written, in the rest areas,
oh yes,
they don't allow many amenities or food or things like that. And you suggest in one of your articles that if federal restrictions limiting that are lifted, that becomes a source of revenue for the maintenance of the infrastructure and roads.
Yes, that's great, Malik. That's to get into the weeds. It's Title 23 of the United States Code that governs a lot of this, and there's actually a restriction on states developing interstate highway rest stops. So anyone who has driven on the interstate highway system in the United States knows what it's like to go pull over on a rest stop that's on the system late at night, and it's dark and it's kind of scary in some places, and it only has bathrooms and a few vending machines. Why is that? That's extremely valuable real estate, and it's because of a restriction that goes back to the 1950s that protected mom and pop diners. But now we're trying to squeeze more value out of the existing system, and that's called value capture. One of the obvious things to do, Malik, is to your point, is to repeal Section 111 of that and allow states to put in restaurants or charging stations for electric vehicles, or perhaps a restaurant. And of course, they can lease those things out and they get lease payments. So that money can help. The Australians pioneered this through what they call asset recycling program. Those monies can be recycled or plowed back into other infrastructure that the state needs to renovate. So I could give you a whole lot of examples of that, Malik, of where just better, more efficient management of the system would extract more value from this old infrastructure, which in some cases is half a century old, and allow state and local infrastructure owners to use those newly freed up dollars to renovate existing infrastructure.
Professor Gates, moving a little bit towards the climate change. Today, the climate scientists of the world have issued a report that 2020 was the hottest on record, and this decade is hotter than any period in history of 125,000 years. Do you think the infrastructure bill, which we are thinking, is keeping in mind what is coming in next few decades?
I think so, Malik. I think there's a lot of awareness of this problem, probably more so than there ever has been in the past. I think there's several elements to answering your question. One is just changing the source of power, right, and switching to more renewable fuels, and there's a whole set of those. As you know, there's wind, there's solar, we at Cornell are working on earth source heating, so pumping water down deep where it's very hot and having hot water pump back up is a renewable energy source, biomass and methane capture and all these things. And I think the bill pays attention to that. Another piece of this is just as you rebuild the infrastructure, do you want to take into account climate change? Maybe you move a highway so it's not as close to the shoreline, or there's a whole set of things. Maybe you use materials, new materials. They're exploring new types of concrete. Concrete is actually, its production is CO2 intensive. So are there new ways of producing concrete that would reduce its carbon footprint? So I think, as you know, there's a whole set of things that need to take that into account. And I do sense, Malik, that there's a high level of awareness and a lot of thought. Maybe that's why the Senate is being slow, but that's okay. In thinking through, climate change and reducing carbon emissions, reducing the use of fossil fuels, switching. It could be hydrogen-powered cars, could be electric cars. There's a whole set of new fuels, right, which have less impact in terms of greenhouse gases. I'm a big fan of any sort of methane capture. It doesn't just have to be wastewater treatment plants. Chicken farms, for example, produce a lot of organic waste, and that methane can be captured and then used to make a renewable energy source, right? So I think there's many elements to answering your question, and I think there's an awareness. Again, how much the final bill, which maybe we'll see in the next week or so, is going to address that remains to be seen.
Well, before we get to the final bill, let's hope Senate passes it. But when it gets to the Senate and House reconciliation process, is there a possibility of experts and professors like you to be involved, or is it at the mercy of politicians merely?
That's a great question, Molly. I've heard that there's something like 2,000 organizations in Washington who have an interest in this. It's $1 trillion bill, $1,000 billion, and it's enormous spending, and it's enormously important. And there's all these different groups that are involved in lobbying Congress right now, as you and I speak, that are trying to nudge the process in one direction or another. Because there's so much money at stake. So I think the impact that a professor can have at this stage is minimal. I think the effect we can have is once the bill is passed and helping to analyze and interpret and take the good parts out of the bill and help state and local owners who actually own the infrastructure, to use these policy developments to their advantage.
Well, thank you so much, Professor Geddes from Cornell, for being with us.
Thank you very much, Malik.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.